Hi everyone, my name is Mark Jackson and I'm the IRM Practice Director for Turnkey UK. Thank you for taking the time out to attend this webinar, which will hopefully provide you with some useful insights into how to achieve a cleaner audit. Before we make a start though, I would like to clarify what we mean by a clean audit in order to set some expectations. Now, it's not realistic to expect that your audit report will come back with no observations at all. Quite frankly, it's an auditor's job to find things, as they won't feel that they've done their job properly unless they've raised something. However, the aim of this webinar is to help provide you with some guidelines and simple techniques to avoid any nasty surprises, i.e. like high-risk issues that have a significant impact on the overall control environment, or common problems that can easily be avoided. This will help manage the audit report so that you're comfortable with what's been left, and more importantly, that senior management and board-level stakeholders are also unfazed by the outcome. During the session, we're going to cover the following areas. Firstly, we'll have a brief intro into audits in order to set the scene. Next, we'll then take a look at the different types of audits that you can face and how this will have an impact on your preparation to ensure that you're ready for it. After that, we'll take a look at the different preparatory steps that you can take to make the audit as efficient as possible, as well as managing the audit observations to an expected and satisfactory level. We'll also discuss how you can build effective working relationships with your auditors and the benefits of doing so. And lastly, we're going to look at a selection of common control areas which often result in audit observations being raised, and what you can do to help meet the auditor's expectations of an effective control in those areas. Now, let's be honest, nobody enjoys being audited. People feel on the spot like they're being judged and that the auditors are only interested in finding holes in their work rather than highlighting the good things that they're doing. It also takes up valuable time, detracting them from the everyday activities that they need to perform, which don't get put on hold just because the auditors are in. As a result, audits are commonly associated with negative connotations, and auditors get a bad rep because they are the instigators of these negative feelings of anxiety and mistrust. In addition, issues are often communicated to senior management, so potentially making you look like you're not doing your job properly. This gets worse when feelings are exacerbated due to the auditee being unprepared. They have a fear of the unknown, particularly if they're not sure what to expect. This is often due to a lack of understanding and appreciation, which, by the way, can be easily addressed. We're going to look at some different ways in which your audit experience can be improved with a little bit more insight. The old saying, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, is also very true in an audit context. Lastly, we'll provide some insight into the following areas: type of audits that you could face, the different audit objectives that they may carry with them, and associated common audit issues. However, it's worth pointing out at this stage that despite the negativity surrounding audits and auditees, they have a very important role to play in protecting you and your organisation. Their years of experience and training in risks and controls can help highlight things that you are simply not aware of, or that you were aware of but weren't controlling in an optimised manner. Therefore, you can work effectively with your auditor to help improve as an organisation. So let's take a look at the different types of audits and how that can affect your preparation. There are many different types of audit, each of them having different aims and objectives. Then you'll never be able to fully prepare for an audit without having this level of information. It's like trying to prepare for a school exam without knowing whether the subject matter is maths or science or history. Even if you know it's a science-based exam, you also need to know whether it's physics, or biology, or chemistry, and even down to the level of which modules within these subjects. Otherwise, it's impossible to know where to start. And it's exactly the same when looking to prepare for audits. You need to understand what type of audit you'll be facing, and this will have an impact on the scope of the review. For example, depending on whether the audit is coming from a financial reporting perspective, or it's operational in nature, or compliance-based. Depending upon which one is being looked at, then this means that certain risk areas become under the spotlight. All of these factors determine the auditor approach, i.e. what they will look for and how they will look for it. Once you know this information, you're provided with valuable indicators upon which to base your preparation. However, this information might not be forthcoming. It might not always just fall into your lap, or if it does, then it's likely to happen just before the start of the audit, so you have little time to prepare. Therefore, you should be proactive in seeking this crucial information to avoid any surprises during the audit. So speak to internal audit or the person responsible for liaising with the external auditors to see when the next audits are planned and their aims and objectives. One big difference in the type of audits you will face are based on whether it is being performed by internal audit or external audit. So at this point, it's helpful to summarise some of the main differences between the two. Firstly, internal audit are concerned with all risks important to the security and well-being of an organisation, whereas external audit have a specific focus on risks relevant to the financial statements. Although they do perform specialist external audits which may review risks related to specific external regulations, for example Sarbanes-Oxley 404 attestations. Internal auditors are also typically employed by the organisations themselves, although they retain their independence by having specific reporting lines, i.e. straight to the audit committee, whereas external auditors are usually employed by accountancy firms or professional services firms. Internal audit also help to ensure adequate risk coverage depending upon the area of focus, but they also have a focus on operational efficiency, whereas external audit ensure completeness and accuracy of financial statements as part of the year-end financial reporting, so they help to ensure financial statement assertions are being addressed in relevant risk areas. Internal audit also represent the interests of company board of directors, whereas external audit represent the interests of company investors and stakeholders, so they help to provide assurance that the value of what they're investing in is appropriate. Whereas internal audit reports are typically issued inside the organisation only, external audit reports can also be issued outside your organisation, including for public distribution, so it can impact the share price if serious financial issues are found. Lastly, internal audit have a programme of audits all year round, whereas external audit typically perform their audit once or maybe twice a year, at year end and half year. So the audit focus will shift depending upon if it is an internal audit or external audit, so it's important to distinguish between the two to help you with your preparation. However, it's still important to get more details than this. For example, internal audit perform many audits of a different nature, so it's likely that any one of those will be different with different aims and objectives. So let's see what preparation steps you can take in advance of your audit. As we've already discussed, it's critical to understand both the type of audit and the underlying audit objectives, as this can help define the scope of the review, allowing you to apply some boundaries on your preparation activities that you may need to undertake. This will help to narrow down both the systems, the risk areas, the controls, as well as the period under review. Make sure that you openly discuss with your auditors any work that you've performed regarding your internal control environment. Highlight these things to give the auditors a good feeling about your awareness and acknowledgement of the importance of risks and controls. Therefore, in preparation, have a think about what you can show them. This could be work that you've performed around your risk and control framework, or demonstrating that you've taken a risk-based approach and the amount of risk coverage that you've achieved. This will help to show that you're not just applying an incoherent scattergun approach to your controls. Lastly, think about the type of control the auditor will be interested in based on the type of audit and the underlying aims and objectives, etc., and gather evidence showing effective operation of the controls, or at least be aware of where the evidence can be found to make it more efficient during the audit itself. This could be email approvals, report reviews, follow-up activities, etc. Auditors need evidence to satisfy their professional skepticism, so be prepared to have the relevant evidence available. Take credit for the control activities being performed, rather than failing due to a mere lack of evidence being available to prove the controls that are operating. Be prepared also for sample testing based on the type of audit and different sample sizes that need to be applied. The documentation of your control framework and the availability of control evidence are just two examples of elements which can dramatically improve your audit experience. But these can be difficult to achieve and involve a lot of digging around with significant time investment required to give a complete and accurate picture to your auditors. Having a tool in place in which to store the information can really help to facilitate the audit process and make everyone's life much easier. For example, SAP GRC has a couple of applications with functionality which can help with this, as well as helping to provide a more controlled environment. Firstly, regarding SAP Process Control, not only can you use it as a central repository for your risks and controls, you can also use it to both plan and perform your control evaluations with evidence of test results retained. Although Audit may need to do their own independent testing, you can detail in the control records within SAP Process Control where evidence of operation is retained to allow the auditors to find this information for themselves, making them much more self-sufficient and taking the burden off you, saving you time and effort. With regard to SAP access controls, you can document access-related risks which you are monitoring and managing via the rule set, as well as demonstrate clean user access via the risk analysis reports, including the use of mitigating controls where required. You can also track and retain evidence of approved emergency access, as well as the log reviews. We've discussed how a controls management tool can help to improve audit efficiency. Now let's discuss how it can improve controls assurance. Regarding SAP Process Control, there are various forms of evaluations to make you aware of control-related issues outside of the audits, so you can remediate them in time before the auditors arrive. You can also log and manage issues that have been identified via the external audit process itself. Regarding SAP Access Control, you can and should embed the use of the tool and its ability to identify access-related issues into your stay clean procedures. These can be a combination of detective measures, e.g. periodic access reviews, as well as preventative ones. For example, segregation of duties checks as part of the user access provisioning process. We need to learn from our mistakes. Learn from past mistakes in order to support preparation for future audits. There's no excuse for the same issues cropping up year after year, unless of course you don't agree with them, in which case you need to have that discussion with your auditor. We should also make use of prior audit reports. These usually include expected actions or recommendations from the auditor, so you have a better idea of what they deem as acceptable, which would help remove the issue from the report, or at the very least reduce the severity level. In addition, audit work programs won't change much year on year, so take a look at what was covered in previous audits of a similar nature and scope. This should help give you a better idea of what to expect. You also need to understand and appreciate the auditor mindset. If you can think like an auditor, then you're halfway there in terms of having a better understanding of what to expect during the audit and why. This also helps to appreciate the auditor mindset and the rules of the game that they're obliged to follow. This includes independence, which refers to the requirement for the audit function to be independent from the rest of the business, and to have a separate reporting line, which is often given, providing them with direct access to the board. Objectivity. This is similar to independence, but refers to individual auditors rather than the entire audit function as a whole. And professional skepticism. This is being not able to simply take your word for it, as they need evidence to back up what has been said.
This penultimate section isn't very long, but it is very important all the same. It can be highly underestimated regarding the benefits of having a healthy and positive working relationship with your auditor. However, if you think about it, then it's kind of common sense that if you can have a constructive relationship with the auditor, the more likely it is that they will be on board with your point of view, or at least give you credit for the good things that you've done to control the risks in your area, and this could be reflected in the audit report for your benefit. The relationship, therefore, should be based on openness and honesty. They're also more likely to provide you with more details on the scope of the audit and better advice or guidance on improving your control environments and remediating underlying issues. The open communication extends to becoming involved in the reporting process itself. This can help you to ensure the accuracy of initial findings within the draft report, so you can remove factual inaccuracies and/or misunderstandings. You also potentially have the opportunity to fix things prior to the final report being published. You may be able to get the auditors to reflect this in the report, although they're not obliged to. It can also be having the ability to negotiate other elements of the report, such as inclusion of internal control highlights, the positive things that you've been doing during the year, and/or providing context behind any specific issues that have been raised. For example, mentioning that you've got a role redesign project which is currently being undertaken, which would help to resolve the majority of access-related issues that have been raised in the report. You may also have the opportunity to discuss risk levels associated with certain issues and make sure that they're accurately reflected in the report, i.e. whether they're high, medium or low, as well as influence the overall conclusion as stated in the audit report, i.e. whether you have a good, satisfactory or unsatisfactory internal control environment.
We're now going to look at a couple of examples of common problems we tend to find when performing SAP IT general controls or application security reviews for our clients. Change management is a big area of focus for auditors as it determines whether changes are performed in a controlled and authorised manner. If they find too many problems in this area, then they will find it difficult to place reliance on any system-based controls, so it's important to get it right when it comes to change management. The principal objective is to force change activities to take place in the development system and get moved across to production using a controlled change management process and avoid this being circumvented. We do this in a number of ways. Firstly, we remove change access in the production system, particularly for those elements which should be changed in the development system and transported across the landscape in a controlled manner. For example, having access to customizing or developer functions, or being able to maintain roles. Another control area includes having the system protection setting permanently set to not modifiable. This is a global setting, so will affect across all of your clients. However, customizing will not be protected by system protection setting as it only prevents repository object changes, so it needs to work in tandem with your client protection settings. Client protection settings should enforce and promote to production change management approach and prevents changes to both client-specific and cross-client customizing and repository objects. If cross-client changes were allowed but system protection was non-modifiable, then no repository object changes would be allowed, although cross-client customizing would be allowed. So you can see how both settings work together. Due to the important role that client protection settings play in enforcing a good practice change management approach, it is crucial that access to changing them is tightly restricted. It might be suitable to remove any permanent access to this function and instead only permit users to change client protection settings via an emergency access management procedure or mechanism, which can then be approved and evidence retained of what was done. As well as system-based controls, the auditors will also be interested in your procedural controls. For example, the same person shouldn't be able to both raise and approve the same change request. There should also be formal test criteria in place to determine the level of testing required depending upon the nature of the change. And any changes also need to be approved prior to migration to production. The second area which commonly throws up control-related issues in the audit report is with regards to generic users. Generic users are not tied to a specific user, so it can be shared between individuals if set up as a dialog account. User IDs which are not owned by specific individuals should be documented with the reason for their existence. These will be reviewed by auditors, as they are a source of unauthorized entry or vulnerability in your system, so it's better to have this all documented in advance and could serve as a good sense-checking exercise for yourself to determine if they are truly required or not. You should also periodically monitor the usage of generic users for appropriateness. You can take a risk-based approach, so the level of monitoring should be in line with the level of access assigned. There should also be a number of controls around the generic system-delivered users, such as SAP Start, DDIC, and SAP CPIC. For example, default passwords should be changed, as they tend to be documented in manuals and so therefore are easily accessible. Access should also be removed and the users locked where not required, as these tend to be supplied with privileged access. They should also be assigned to protected user groups so that only certain groups of users can maintain them. And there's also additional controls over the user SAP Star. For example, the security parameter login no automatic user SAP Star should be set to 1, as it avoids it being recreated in the system, as it is hard-coded with full powers restored and default password pass being active. In addition, the user type should be changed to a background user with user type B to avoid dialog logins. We've come to the end of this webinar. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you found the content useful and it's made you feel more at ease with how to approach and prepare for your next audit. If you would like to know more information on how Turnkey can help you, then please get in touch with us via our website.